Hi there, KS3. Welcome back to your third lesson in this scheme of learning about discussing writer's aims. This is Mr. Palmer again. So this is lesson 3, writing about writer's aims, and this is the first video in which we're going to annotate a WAGOLL. This is for week beginning Monday, the 29th of June, 2020, and obviously it follows on from the previous 2 lessons as well. So let's get started. Reminder, our big question for the term is how do writers create memorable characters and situations? Our learning path skills are writer's aims, number 1, number 5, reading skills, and number 3, vocabulary. If you're in year 7 and you want a reminder, there it is, you can pause there. And if you're in year 8 and you want a reminder of your skills, you can pause there. And for the purpose of today, we're looking mainly at 1 and 3. Okay, let's get started with our vocabulary. Remember, you're getting 2 words a week and they're being displayed in a new format. Remind that you need to write down all of those possible definitions, versions of the word, plus the definition. A reminder of word classes there. And then on slide 2, you're writing down your own example sentence, not the one I give you. So our first word is origin. Origin. Say it after me. Origin. 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 And that's where something comes from. So we have the adjective original, the verb to originate, and the adverb originally. So you may well have heard quite a few of these words before, but the noun is origin. Pause there and write that down. And then we'll move on to using it in a sentence. I always check the country of origin to make sure I'm getting the best tasting fruit. I always check the country of origin to make sure I'm getting the best tasting fruit. So your question, what is the country of origin of your favourite food? And I've given you a sentence starter there. Remembering if you don't know what the country of origin of your favourite food is, you can always use a different type of food like pizza or curry or beef burgers. And as a challenge, can you use the adjective original, the verb to originate, and the adverb originally in your answer? So pause there and do that. We'll move on to our second word of the day, which is untrustworthiness. Untrustworthiness. Say it after me. Untrustworthiness. Untrustworthiness. If you put it all together, untrustworthiness, which is the quality that means people cannot believe you. The adjective is untrustworthy. And if you look at the word, the way it's broken down here, it's built around the word trust. So we know that if someone's trustworthy, then we do believe them. If they're untrustworthy, we don't believe them. We cannot trust that person. So if a person is doing something we can't believe, then they are showing untrustworthiness. So pause there and write that down. We'll move on to the examples. He was trying to hide his untrustworthiness by being extra nice to everybody he was talking to. I've put her there by accident, but he was trying to hide his untrustworthiness by being extra nice to everybody he was talking to. And I'm trying to make you to think what else might suggest untrustworthiness in another person. So I'll put someone being too nice here. What else might make you think a person is untrustworthy? There's your sentence there. It's not a starter, but you can put the quality at the start here. And a challenge is, can you use the adjective untrustworthy in your answer? And pause there. Now we're going to move on and have a look at some analytical writing, which is the way we refer to writing about writer's aims. By the end of this week's lesson, you will have at least written an analytical paragraph about the change in Mary Maloney in Lamb to the Slaughter, and an analytical paragraph about how the police are presented in Lamb to the Slaughter. And both of these are going to be submitted on Show My Homework, and your teacher's going to mark it and provide you and your class with feedback. So this is a really important one this week. This is another one where you'll get a chance to get some feedback from your teacher about the work that you did. And the first question we're going to be doing is, how does Roald Dahl show the change in Mary Maloney throughout the story of Lamb to the Slaughter? How does Roald Dahl show the change in Mary Maloney throughout the story of Lamb to the Slaughter? So I want you to find at least 3 quotations from last week that show the change, and I want you to think about what she's like at each of those points. Okay, so if you pause there and try and find at least 3 quotations showing the change in Mary. So hopefully I'd like you to have all those quotations ready, and I'm going to list all the ones we did that I think show changes in Mary. So here's the ones from the start. So we've got Mary Maloney was waiting for her husband to come home from work, and she took his coat and hung it in the closet. Then she walked over and made the drinks. And these 2 quotations from the start show that Mary is quite an obedient housewife, that her life revolves around her husband, and that she does everything for him. And then in the middle, there are quite a few of these. So there was Mary Maloney simply walked up behind him, and without any pause, she swung the big frozen leg of lamb. There was, all right, she told herself, so I've killed him. There was, she sat down before the mirror, tidied her hair, touched up her lips and face. She tried a smile. It came out rather peculiar. She tried again. And then we've got, she rehearsed it several times more. So these first 2 show the change where she suddenly murders her husband, almost like she's not really thinking about what's going on. And these 2 show that she's starting to think about covering up for that murder. But that's all in the middle. And then at the end, I had these 2. And these 2 are going to be the ones that you're going to really need to know about today, because these are the ones, one of these, and you'll choose it yourself, is going to be the one you're going to be writing about. So first we had, would you mind giving me a drink? He handed her the glass. And then we had, and in the other room, Mary Maloney began to giggle. And if you remember last week, you can check your notes. We said that this one here, this top one, would you mind giving me a drink? He handed her the glass. That one showed she was starting to take control. She was bossing the men around now, and they were doing things for her. And then this one here suggests that she's either laughing maybe because she's got away with it, or she might be going a bit mad. We said there were lots of different interpretations to that one. So just a reminder, these are the ones today that you're going to be writing about. Now, this suggests, doesn't it, that any answer to the question on the previous slide, how does Roald Dahl show the change in Mary Maloney throughout the story of Lamb to the Slaughter, would really be best answered with 3 paragraphs. At the beginning, she's like this. In the middle, she's like this. At the end, she's like this. We could probably do more paragraphs if we wanted to, but 3 is normally good if we're trying to show change in a character. Where they begin, how they begin to change, and where they are at the end is normally a good way to plan that one out. So we're going to be writing 3 paragraphs. And what I've done is I've pre-written the paragraph for how she is at the start. I'm going to go through that second paragraph with you, sentence by sentence. And while I'm writing that second paragraph, you're going to be writing the third paragraph. So let's have a look at the first one. So this is the first paragraph in answer to the question, how does Roald Dahl show the change in Mary Maloney throughout the story of Lamb to the Slaughter? And I've written, at the start of Lamb to the Slaughter, Roald Dahl shows Mary Maloney to be a quiet and obedient housewife. When we first meet her, she is waiting for her husband to come home from work. This shows that Mary lives with a very set routine that is built around her husband's job. He is in charge of the marriage, and Mary's job is to prepare his meals for when he arrives home. The verb waiting connotes reliance and anticipation, which reinforces the fact that she has planned her day around him and his movements. So that's our first paragraph. What's Mary like at the start of the story? This is how we'll carry on with it. So I'm going to write paragraph 2 and you're going to write paragraph 3. But first, what I'd like you to do is break down this first paragraph. So I've put it into 4 sentences, 4 segments. At the start of Lamb to the Slaughter, Roald Dahl shows Mary Maloney to be a quiet and obedient housewife. This is shown when we first meet her as she is waiting for her husband to come home from work. This shows that Mary lives with a very set routine that is built around her husband's job. He is in charge of the marriage, and Mary's job is to prepare his meals for when he arrives home. The verb waiting connotes reliance and anticipation, which reinforces the fact that she has planned her day around him and his movements. Now, this is the WAGOLL that's on the homework. So if you've managed to print that off, you can write on there. If not, you can make your own notes, but you don't need to copy this up. You can just, in this next section, write down notes about which piece is doing. So the first thing I want you to do is think about, what does this first sentence do? So at the start of Lamb to the Slaughter, Roald Dahl shows Mary Maloney to be a quiet and obedient housewife. So if you can pause the video here and write down what you think is happening in that first sentence. What am I doing in that first sentence? So pause there. And if we have a look at that, the answer I've given, and you may well have worded this differently, is that the first sentence answers the question directly with a statement. And what I mean there is that here's the question: how does he show the change? And I've answered the question by saying at the start, she's like this. So it answers the question, and the first sentence always needs to answer that question. And when I say it's with a statement, it's quite short, it's quite simple. There's nothing here that can be disagreed with. This is a statement of fact. So you always at the start want to be answering the question with a statement. Now we'll move on to the second sentence. This is shown when we first meet her as she is waiting for her husband to come home from work. I'd like you to pause there and say what I'm doing in that sentence. And if we look at that, I've written the second sentence uses a quotation as an example to prove what you said in the first. Now let's look at what I mean by that. By quotation, I mean this bit here, which is a quotation taken from the text. And that's what we worked on last week. But this quotation here proves what I said in the first sentence. Let's just check it does. I said in the first sentence, Mary Maloney is a quiet and obedient housewife. And here I am saying that she is waiting for her husband to come home from work. So that proves what I said in this first sentence. So again, we've got a first sentence answering the question with a statement. We've got a second sentence proving that with a quotation from the text. Now let's have a look at that third sentence. This shows that Mary lives with a very set routine that is built around her husband's job. He is in charge of the marriage, and Mary's job is to prepare his meals for when he arrives home. If you'd like to pause there and say what I'm doing there. And let's have a look at that. So the third sentence shows what we as readers can infer from the quotation. Remembering, infer is the stuff that isn't quite said in the quotation, but it's the stuff that we can understand from reading it. What we from the readers can infer from the quotation, and it also goes into more depth about answering the question. So let's just check I've done that. So this shows that Mary lives with a very set routine that is built around her husband's job. Does it show that? Well, she's waiting for her husband to come home from work. So it does, doesn't it? It tells us that that's something she normally does, is wait for her husband to come home from work. And then I've gone on. Notice I've put a semicolon here. So this is a second clause. But I could have done a second sentence, and that's fine. This isn't a rules about how many sentences we write in a paragraph. So I could have been my third and fourth sentence here. It just so happens that I've used a semicolon to make it one large sentence with 2 clauses. So how have I gone into more depth? He is in charge of the marriage, and Mary's job is to prepare his meals for when he arrives home. So does that go into more depth in answer to the question? Well, it does, doesn't it? It relates back to the statement I've made here. Roald Dahl shows Mary Maloney to be a quiet and obedient housewife. Down here, I'm saying it's her job to prepare his meals for him, and that he's in charge. Does it relate back to the question? Yes, it does, because it's showing what she's like at the start of the story. Notice I haven't gone beyond the start, because that's what I'm talking about at the moment. So I've got a statement that answers the question. I've got a quotation that proves the statement. And then I've got this part here that infers that meaning, the inference from the quotation, and relates it back to the statement and relates it back to the question. And then finally, I've got this fourth sentence here. The verb waiting connotes reliance and anticipation, which reinforces the fact that she has planned her day around him and his movements. I'll let you pause there and say what I'm doing in that final sentence. And this is what I've written. The fourth sentence takes one word, discusses the connotations, and gives further explanation in answer to the question. Let's see if we've done that. One word. Yep. The word I selected from that quotation was waiting. It's really important to remember that the one word we take has to come from the quotation, not from anywhere else. So the verb waiting connotes, that means connotations, reliance and anticipation. So there are the two connotations that I took from the word waiting. She's anticipating him coming home. She's looking forward to it, but she's reliant on him. Him coming home is part of her routine. And then I've said this reinforces the fact that she has planned her day around him and his movements. Does this give further explanation? Yes, it does. We've said that she's obedient. Then we've said she's waiting. Then we've said it's her job. Then we've said that she plans her day. So all this is building up our answer to that question of what is Mary like at the start of the story. So, in summary, before I end this part of the video, we have a first sentence which directly answers the question with the statement. We have a second sentence which uses a quotation as an example to prove what was said in the first. We have a third sentence that explains what the readers see, goes into more depth answering that question. And we have a fourth sentence that takes one word, identifies the word type, and then once again gives more explanation. So everything follows on, one sentence to the other. It's really important when we're doing that we need to understand that any quotation isn't good enough there. We need the quotation that proves that. And any explanation isn't good enough here. We need the explanation of what that quotation meant, which proves that. And here we need to select a word from that quotation. So that's the end of the first video. That's our annotation. In the second video, we're going to be doing some shared writing. So I will see you then.